everyone, it's Miss Sally with your first video lecture called What Not to Do, although we are going to be talking about what you should do as well. The first thing I have for you is called Tell Them What You're Going to Tell Them, and then tell them what you told them. What does that mean? It means, basically, I'm going to tell you about this today. Then, this is what blah blah blah. Then, so as we've seen, blah blah blah. You introduce it, then you talk about it, and then you tell them, okay, we talked about that a minute ago. That doesn't mean that you have to have a long speech or that any of these elements need to be lengthy, like 7 minutes or 3 hours or whatever. So that's the first thing. The second one is related. Taking 1,000 years to say something does not mean that you're that eloquent, or, oh wow, she spoke for 20 minutes instead of 4, so that means that she gave a good speech. That's certainly not the case. It's much better to have a really, really good 2 or 3 minute speech that's like a minute or two short than a really long-winded speech that's maybe okay, but it could be tightened up here, here, and here. So, third of all, don't add new points at the end. You have your outline 1.1, point 2, point 3, and then if you just think of something later, or even something that just seems to fit, or you just want to save it for the end, then that's not... People who save things for the end often like to do it because they're trying to save it as a surprise. And if that's the case, then you can do that and make it work for you. But other people, sometimes they just happen to think about it, or maybe they're not very organized, so it didn't fit where it's supposed to go in the outline. So watch out for that. Also, some people take maybe 5 minutes to the intro, and then they either have a very, very, very long speech, or their speech is really and truly a baby speech. It's like another minute or something, because the intro became the whole speech. Finally, and this is very easy for me to say, of course, you shouldn't say things like slang, rocks, rule, oh that rocks, or oh this rules, or whatever. You want to be a little more formal than you are in your everyday life, and in fact you want to be quite a bit more formal than you are in your everyday life. And if you're giving a presentation, you can be a little bit less formal than that, but still more formal than everyday conversations. Also, now we have some delivery issues. The first part was organization and outline issues, and now we're looking at the that's actually the first one. There's something that I like to call the rhythmic or the rhythmic and what happens there is some people could say, well, the important thing to remember is that Mary had a little lamb, and they keep saying every 5 seconds, or they have this like interval of time that goes by, and they just keep saying the same thing over again. It can be or like, and you know when you draw, or some people say but some people actually say, and then blah 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 blah, and then it's just, it becomes, even though the word like is actually a real word, or even some people say every 5 seconds, and it gets very irritating very quickly, trust me. Another thing is, now most of you are going to be sitting down if you're using a web camera like I am right now, but some of you would stand at a podium, and if you're standing at a podium, then your arms will be freer to do this next sin that is, I call it, putting the smack down. Putting the smack down is when I started teaching, basically what happened was people would be nervous, but they wouldn't want to show it. Now this still goes on today, but this is when I first noticed it. People would do these strange gestures like shrugging, just like the rhythmic every 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 seconds they keep throwing in an You could count, it's like clockwork, you can count by it. These people would shrug, say, and then the important thing to remember is, and they would like slap their leg, like, my job is so wonderful, but, and like, it's like an octopus with your arms and everything shaking it. It looks kind of ridiculous. So watch out for that. And that's called putting the smack down. And, well, okay, next up we have not practicing enough. And this happens, I did notice it in some of your videos. Sometimes it could be you have a piece of paper that you're looking at, and then you just want to keep looking back at it, just sort of for reassurance, because you think, okay, well, I wrote it, so I technically should know what's on the paper. Yes, you wrote it, but when you're reading it, it's a little bit different. And when you're reading it for the first time, it's different than reading it the second or the fifth time. So it's my advice that you would read it not only once or twice, but read it once or twice or 3 times out loud and in front of a camera. And at the very least, you can have a look at what is it that you're doing, right and wrong. Another thing that just came to my head, and you're not supposed to add things as you're going along that's not in your paper, but this is an important thing because I just saw myself doing it on the little camera thing. When you do this to your chair, you're just sort of fidgeting. I do have the word fidgeting down here, but fidgeting could be just, whatever it is moving. You could have a pen and start clicking it. You could be playing with, like, you know how drummers or whatever. All that stuff. It's very distracting, especially to a camera audience, because they can rewind it and keep looking and say, wow, do they have ADD or what? And I do have ADD, so I can say it. Next we have rattling paper. A lot of people did this. They're like... So then I was talking about my speech, and yeah, it's an important thing to talk. Can you hear anything I'm saying? No. And the paper becomes much louder on the microphone, and it sounds all distorted and horrific. So watch out for that. And put it in front of you, whether it's on something flat, or even if you have another computer like right there, you can just put it on the screen, or maybe someone can have cue cards or whatever. Then we have, I want to go back to not practicing enough, and the reason I keep looking down is I'm obsessed with the time. I wanted to make this a 3-minute video, but it's probably going to end being 10 minutes, which means it's going to take a year to upload. So sorry for that, but this is our first lecture after all, so it probably will be a little bit longer. Not practicing enough. I think it's a good idea if you read your speech. And again, when I say read your speech, I don't mean read word for word. That's like the worst thing you can do, is reading your speech word for word. A lot of people they're not good at reading, or they are good at reading, but they don't look up enough. Like they'll be... And then the next speech that I'm talking about is Mary Had a Little Lamb and blah blah blah. Supercalifragilistic, it's like they're not really, it's flat, and you don't want to like act it like, and then the man said, how dare you talk about, and you're doing voices and stuff. You'll probably end up cracking yourself up, or thinking, well, some people could think you're on crack if you did that. But what I would do is I would have the piece of paper or your outline or whatever, just put it in front of you, and then read it, go by the outline a few times extemporaneously. Now, if you remember from your textbook, extemporaneously means, yes, you do have an outline, and you're going by it, but the outline isn't like 200,000 sentences. It's just point number 1, X, supporting point, whatever it is. And each thing is just a phrase, it's a few words, and that's it. So another thing is, especially if you're doing something that's really off the cuff and impromptu speech, what I would recommend is record it once, twice, 3 times, and then see where you keep messing up.